Welcome back to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend just a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Ted Bannock, and I think we're gonna have a quick episode for you. And Dave, I think it's gonna strike well with our listeners.
Oh yeah,
don't you think?
Yeah. Well, before we do that, we should probably, make sure that all the rulesy stuff about the podcast are good, because sometimes the rulesy stuff about the podcast is going to be complicated and hard to understand, especially when things are so convoluted and don't say things but mean things and don't do it, especially in the core set, right?
Yes. So we're gonna so the card we're talking about today, we're gonna just do some kind of application of the rules for it. So we'll get to that in a little bit here.
Yeah. So, but before we get into that, let's very quickly talk about how people can stay connected with us. We have a plethora of ways to stay connected. We have, of course, the pod, which is on any podcatcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, you name it, we're out there. And then we have the YouTube channel. We have the blog. Matt does amazing work keeping up with the card reviews and keeping cards going and putting out all the stuff that he does, playthroughs, you name it. Matt's doing that. And that's been around for almost 2 years now, so we got a lot going on over there. We have Micah, who is doing his Second Breakfast, which is a playthrough series where he's just playing games with certain deck restrictions and deck building requirements, and then he plays certain scenarios, and it's fun to see what he's doing. And I'm getting close to wrapping up my Angmar Awakened campaign at this point. And the last thing that I do want to say is we are putting out swag this year. So if you want in on the swag, we have a $5 Patreon level and up between April anytime, but if you want to be eligible for the swag, you have to be a patron from April to October. So you can join anytime between now and the end of April, and you will be considered a receiver of the swag as long as you stay active through October. So
and that's what we all want to be, a swag receiver.
A swag receiver. Right. That was my nickname in high school.
Yeah.
But that unfortunately wasn't as quick as I wanted it to be. So Ted, strike out and tell us what the card is.
Hey, today's card is Quick Strike. It is a tactics event that cost 1, and it reads action. Exhaust a character you control to immediately declare it as an attacker and resolve its attack against any eligible enemy targets.
So this is super easy, right? All I have to do is I just have to pick something and I just have to exhaust it and I can attack anything that I want, right?
It may seem that way, Dave, but not exactly.
So Ted, let's go backwards through this card, through the text here, and let's first start with the phrase any eligible enemy target. What is any eligible enemy target?
Okay, so you have to sort of pretend this is a great question, by the way, because it doesn't maybe make sense when you first read it, but you have to sort of pretend that it's the combat phase and that you are just attacking an enemy that any regular character can attack. So if I'm playing a game and I have an enemy engaged with me already, I can exhaust any one of my heroes to attack it. Now, if I had a ranged character I could attack an enemy that is engaged. If you and I were playing a game that is engaged with you, because that is eligible to be attacked. But like, I can't target enemies in the staging area, or my regular non-ranged characters cannot target the staging area or anywhere else.
Well, what about done here? Corset, right? Here he is, right in the corset. This is
yes, and so there are some exceptions. Dunn here has it works with him because he's got a passive ability. He has this kind of passive ongoing text that says Dunn here can target enemies in the staging area when he attacks alone. When doing so, he gets +1 attack. So because his ability is passive, he, when attacking by himself, could target an enemy in the staging area and apply his bonus.
Okay. What about Haldir of Lorien?
Also a great question.
Yeah.
Yes. So he's ranged. So he could apply it to anything he's engaged with or engaged by already with another player. Now he has a combat action to exhaust and declare himself as an attacker. But that is a combat action. And you could actually play this card during the quest phase or some other action window, because this is an action speed card. Mm-hmm. But secondly, you can't combine the two effects. You can't combine the combat action to exhaust. It's like you're trying to do two things at the same time that have the same cost of exhausting, and there's just too much going on.
So you can't attack with Haldir into the staging area because it's a combat action. And presumably you're using this card not in combat, right? You could use this card in combat.
And we're going to talk about that
like
as well.
It's a Nonbo with Haldir. Well, Haldir already does this as a combat action, so there's no reason to use this card for Haldir, right? Like... unless you engaged something this round and then but then you can't, right? Because the stipulation of the combat action is to be able to attack in the stage. So you can't attack into the staging area with Haldir with this card, no matter when you use it, right? Like you're just going to use Haldir,
right?
You're just going to use Haldir's ability, his action.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are some eligible enemies? Like we just went over like where they are, but let's talk about like, are unique enemies eligible? And you know where I'm going with this.
I know exactly where you're going with this.
Non-unique are sure eligible, right?
Most of the time. So yeah, if you have a unique or named enemy, engage with them. They can be a target. Now, this card, something to rulesy about this card is Quick Strike doesn't target enemies. It actually targets your hero or character. It says exhaust a character, so it could be an ally. It targets them to make the attack. So another important thing to point out that I think you're getting at is if the enemy is immune to player card effects, right?
Yeah.
This is not targeting that. It's not saying target enemy gets attacked or target enemy gets minus defense. Right. It's not I'm targeting, if I have hero Aragorn, like I'm targeting Aragorn to then give him the command to attack, and therefore you could attack enemies that are immune to player card effects.
Right. And so because it says exhaust a character, if it said choose an enemy and then exhaust the character to attack the chosen enemy, you can't do that.
Right, because it doesn't say to target enemies. It's to just pick a character.
Right.
Now.
Yeah. And so now let's go to immediately declare it as an attacker and resolve its attack.
Okay. So yes. So you exhaust.
Welcome to the Rules Lawyer episode of Card Talk,
really
everybody.
What this is. Yeah. And it's stumped a lot of players and new players, and so this card is a couple of things with that. So first of all, this is its own effect, and the effect specifically states to exhaust a character to make them to make them do an attack. That is limited to, the attack is limited to that character only. So if I exhaust Aragorn and I'm like, gee, Aragorn's attack is 3, that's not enough to kill this orc or whatever, or the spider that needs 4 strength to kill, I cannot pick another character per the normal rules of the game. Usually during the attack phase, you can declare multiple attackers, right? Add their strength value. You can't do that with this card. Not quick strike.
Right.
It's singular.
Right.
Quick strike.
That's right. That's not Quick's strike.
Quick strikes. No,
No.
It is not.
A singular strike.
So that is a great question.
Okay.
And you do resolve its attack. So, if Aragorn attacks for 3 and the enemy has 1 defense, you resolve that and the enemy takes 2. And if the enemy only had 2 hit points or 2 hit points left, the enemy that's engaged with you would be immediately discarded. And if you had any effects that said after you defeat an enemy, foe hammer, exhaust weapon draw, you could trigger those as well.
So what about opening up action windows and that sort of thing?
Well, so this is an action.
Right.
It goes at action speed in any type of action window. So it's not limited to the combat phase. So
no, what I'm saying is, because now this opens up an attack, so is there more action windows within the attack that are opened up because of this? Because now you get, I guess it's happening in an action window in and of itself, but, because now you are attacking an enemy, can you then trigger another action within that to boost an attack? Or
so generally,
if you know what I'm saying, if you know what I'm getting at, right?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe you might have a more specific case, but you can play other action speed cards. Yes, because if you're in a player action window, you can play any type of action. So if you have, we just did an episode recently on For Gondor, which boosts all characters' attacks. Or we did one on Blade Mastery. Blade Mastery is a 1-cost event where you get to boost characters' attack. Although I think, is that a combat action?
I don't think so.
Okay.
That was going to be you're already predicting even more questions.
Yeah, see, so if it's a combat action, right. No, because combat actions are for,
provided you're not in the combat phase.
Right. So if I'm trying to do this in the travel phase action window, player action window, I can't play combat actions. But For Gondor, which is an action, give all my characters +1 attack, I could do that. And even though I'm only attacking with 1 character, if I desperately wanted to get that 1 attack and pay the 2 resources, boost Aragorn's attack to 4, and then play Quick Strike, you could do that in that order. You can say, I play For Gondor, I play Quick Strike, I attack this character, I deal it damage.
So, let's say you're in the quest phase. Let's see if you can follow along.
Okay.
And so, in the quest phase, you have Tactics Aragorn and Galadriel. Okay? And Galadriel has Nenya on her. Okay? So can you...
all right.
Right? So Galadriel has Nenya. So then, can you take Tale of Tenuvial and move the willpower on Galadriel to Tactics Aragorn and then play Quick Strike to kill an enemy for 7 or 6 because you added Galadriel's willpower to her. To Tactics Aragorn.
My initial response is yes. So Tale of Tenuviel is an action where you exhaust a Noldor to ready a Dunedain,
Right.
and they get a bonus to their attack based on that character's willpower. So, yeah, you can do that in the correct order of operations. We say action window open. I'm going to Tale of Tenuviel to ready, and then I'm going to.
And you can even
strike.
commit Aragorn to the quest, and you can get 6 willpower and 6 attack and quick strike, right? Kill something post staging, and then you kill something, and then you can bring it down and take the next thing out of the staging area, right? Like, I don't know. Am I getting too far into the weeds here?
No, and that's kind of what this card does to people. In general, is it's a you read it and you're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna make an attack, and then like all these crazy use cases comes up for it that really we're going through. So that's really today's episode. Yes, all of those things.
Right. So in my case, I'm using Galadriel to throw willpower to Aragorn to boost Aragorn's willpower, but then that also Tale of Tenuviel allows that to add Galadriel's 4 willpower to his willpower, defense, and attack, and then that would make him because it's 4 willpower, that would make him, and then you could use Fair and Perilous, or is Fair and Perilous a combat action?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
All of a sudden,
I think it's yeah. You can chain together other types of actions, like we said, as long as they're not combat actions, and you kind of have to figure out the order that makes the most sense to do them. But yeah, a lot of those things are possible.
Right, but Fair and Perilous, you can't add that with Aragorn because he's not a Noldor.
Oh, he's not. No.
Yeah.
Right. So Fair and Perilous initially targets a Noldor character.
Right. Anyways, but the point is that there's a lot that you can do with Quick Strike, and you can. The beauty of it is that you can attack immune enemies, immune to player card effects, because it doesn't target the
enemy itself.
The enemy, right.
Yeah.
And so It's kind of an interesting thing.
I would like to point out one more rules things about this card. Now, this card is its own effect. So if you're choosing to play it during the combat phase, all right, there's a rule in place. There's like a statute of attacks or limit of attacks rule. So even if you have a character who can ready, I like to use Tactics Boromir in this example. His ability to action to ready himself by raising your threat by 1. And if it's the attack window, you might attack with Boromir once, unless the enemy doesn't die, it's not enough, right? So then you're like, oh, okay, I'll ready Boromir, and Boromir attacks again. Like, not how the normal rules work. You can declare 1 attack against 1 enemy in the combat phase. However, Quick Strike is its own separate effect.
Right. It's not what we call a framework attack.
Yes, it is not within the regular framework or like in the set printed rules of the game. You're playing a special card. It's a special skill. It's an event that is allowing you to pay the resources and cost to then just do what the card says. The card is, in essence, it's kind of overriding that rule, right? Or sidestepping it, because it's its own thing. So in that case, you could ready Boromir. You'd have to play this card if you wanted Boromir to attack the same enemy in the same combat phase, in the same turn.
Right. Woohoo!
I had to mention that,
Right.
as well.
So if you want two attacks from the same character
Yep, which there are
to the
plenty of
same
ways to
enemy.
ready
Right.
characters.
Right.
Here, a lot of heroes can ready themselves. So yeah, it's got some tricksy stuff going on with it. And I'm sure a lot of people didn't know like it could be used that way, or maybe only played it during the combat phase, not realizing it's just a regular action.
Right. Again,
So
so let's get out of the weeds and let's talk a little bit. Like, this is a great card from the core set that allows you
why would I want to do any of those things,
right,
Dave?
right.
Why would I want to go through all that?
Post staging, if you have a character that can kill something and you're not going to make it, but you can kill something, like you have a great attacker but not a awesome quester. In general, I'm going to channel my inner Chad from Cardboard of the Rings, is that, if you can, a quick strike is as good as a defense if you can kill the enemy, because
Yes.
then you don't have to defend it. You can
It's
just
actually
kill it
better.
and be done and not have to worry about it.
Because in doing so, you will prevent the shadow card from going off if you kill the enemy before the attack.
Right. And so there's plenty of times that I have had a Hobbit deck or even my Sylvan deck, and I just am like, why didn't I put Quick Strike in here? Not even Hands Upon the Bow, which kind of analogous to this card in some ways, but is also not as flexible as this card. So I just think why don't I have Quick Strike in this deck?
Yeah.
I should put Quick Strike for one tactics resource to be able to plunk off an enemy is pretty good. But the thing is it has to be an enemy that you can normally attack during the combat phase. So if it's not engaged with you, that's a problem in most builds. So there's some ways that this is annoying, but there's also a lot of ways where I'm like, I wish I put this in the deck. What's your uses for this? What are a couple of your favorite uses for this card, Ted?
So yeah, you want to put it on someone who has high attack, and a really great way is to combine it with someone who has high attack and also can lower defenses. So really great combination is if you play both Hero Quick Beam, who's got 4 attack, and if you're also playing Tactics Aragorn, he just an enemy that's engaged with you gets -1 defense. So now Quick Beam can just, I'm going to attack for 4. Right. And that enemy is -1 defense without doing any type of crazy boosting. You'll kill a lot more enemies, right? By just having those two next to each other. So yeah, it helps. And then Quick Beam can even ready and then attack again later in the same fate. He can make his normal attack. So it's also fun. It's like Quick Beam, Quick Strike, and
the Marksman of Lorien in is really good for this, because the Marksman of Lorien reduces the defense by 2 and then will attack for 3 in the in the combat phase. But if you can play this right after in the action window, right after shadow cards are dealt, you may not have to worry about that enemy. It's that's usually when I'm thinking I should play this with the Marksman of Lorien. And with the bonus, Marksman of Lorien is +1 with Celeborn's bonus the round it comes into play. So so
certainly
4 attack, no defense usually. That kills most things, or a lot of things.
Yep. So it's fun, and I will point out then 2 is another rules thing, that since this targets it targets characters, there is a particular tactics character that does not work with this card. If you can guess who that is.
Beorn.
It is Beorn,
right?
Because Beorn is immune to player card effects. This is a player card effect that, as we already stated, targets him, and he would be a great target. His attack's 5 just by itself, but he's not
Right.
fast enough or something. Whatever. Can't use it with him because it's too good.
Right. It is definitely a Nonbo.
Yeah.
Well, should we talk about the art for this card? I mean, there's use case
Oh
after
God,
use
I want
case
to talk
use
about
case.
the art so bad.
Okay, Ted, the floor is yours, sir.
Okay, all right. So we got this elf, right? It looks elf, lady elf warrior, right? I see like the ears swinging her sword. That part is cool. It looks like she's swinging her sword. I don't know what she's looking at. I don't know what kind of face she's making. It looks like she has no pupils, eyes. I can't. I think she's making like a face,
right?
But I can't tell. But you're like, okay. But the part that I don't get is the thing out of focus in the background.
It's strolling off into the sunset.
So, what does it look like to you?
It looks like an armored orc or something.
It does look, thank you. So it looks like an armored orc to me. And he looks like he's just sauntering off into the sunset, that he's sad.
Right.
So in my mind, this is not like you would think like quick strike, like kind of like hasty strike, like you killed the enemy before, but it just looks like this elf is like so fast and the orc's sad about it.
Right.
So he's like, I can't beat you. Or there was some type of competition and they were sword fighting and they're like, who's faster? And they sliced like a banana in half and they're like, you're the quickest elf.
It's like those things where they take it out and they go like this and then the apple's cut in half or whatever.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And the orc's like, I'm not as good. I'm not as fast as you. I'm not quick enough. And so he saunters off into the sunset.
Right.
Very sad.
Right. I am a emo goblin.
Like he's not running. He's just like, he's got his head down and he looks like he's moving at a slow pace. You know, his shield is kind of drooping off to the side.
Right. So my interpretation of this is it's vampire elf maiden. Okay, so it looks like her teeth are overlapping her lower lip, and she's looking off at this orc, and I think she's ready to attack. I think she's ready to attack like this, but she's also got the world's shortest right arm. Like, the perspective on the right arm is wild to me. So, I think that this is before. I think that orc is not yet, because it's the quick strike before. Like, she's getting ready to. That's how I took it. But definitely she's got at least a severe overbite.
Yeah, I don't quite fully understand everything. I haven't figured it out in like a decade or however long this card's been around.
Right.
I enjoy playing the card.
Yeah. The last thing that I'm going to point out, and this is something that hardly ever happens in Lord of the Rings, but she's got a design on her breastplate that emphasizes her breasts, which kind of brings them more forward and makes her, like most Lord of the Rings art cards don't emphasize those features, and so.
Yeah, that is a good way to put it.
Yeah. So, anyways. So, Vampire Elf Lady. But it's a very good card. Should we ring this card?
Yeah, let's bring it up.
Okay. So, for anybody who doesn't know, maybe you forgot or maybe you're new to the show, we have a highly scientific yet arbitrary system where we rank a card on a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is the one card to rule them all, and 10 is the card that we throw back into the fiery chasm from whence it came. So, I think that this card is good. I think it's good in a lot of situations. I think it can solve multiple problems that you may be having, at least temporarily. And I think that that's important. If you have an event that only solves one problem one way, that's not very good. But this, you can definitely solve a defense problem, an attack problem, a multiple attack problem, your neighbor's attack problem. Like, there's just a lot of different things that this solves. That said, I'm still not including this, in my deck. I always want it after I build a deck.
Yeah, you want it in the times you're like, oh man, if only I had a quick strike right now.
I know, but and it's funny. It's that like, oh, I need it now, but I'm not going through multiple scenarios saying, oh, I should put a quick strike in here because I could have used it here, 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 and here. It's like, oh, here's this one time out of 4 scenarios that, out of 40 rounds of game that I've played that I could have used it, so.
It's good in a little of the earlier scenarios. It's a little bit better because the enemies are weaker, they have lower hit points or lower defenses.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the core set, you can actually quick strike, strength attack 3 will kill a fair amount of things.
Yeah.
But I need to, like I said, I need to beef it up and play it on like Quick Beam or, it actually has a great application too in some 3 Hunters decks because typically you have, heroes that are really stacked out.
Right.
And they have like
they're the
7
ones.
Attack.
Right.
So definitely plenty of places to play it still.
Yeah. So for me, I think that this is like a 4. So Ted, what do you think?
Yeah. Man, I'm tempted just to give it a 3 because it, you can do a couple tricksy things with it, and it's the fact that it as you mentioned before, it's not only do you stop the attack, but you stop the shadow card, which is just really underestimated. And you save yourself an entire action when doing it. And it's gonna come up, I think, more often than you think. And there aren't a lot of cards in the game where like, only I had this card right now. I mean, yes, you could say that about a lot of cards, but I think about Quick Strike the most.
And I think that's what I was trying to get across.
Yeah,
it's like I come across situations where I wish I had this card more often than I come across situations where I was like,
if only I had Strength of Will right now.
Yeah. Right. Oh, Radagast Cunning. If I just had deep knowledge, like. So, anyways. Well, everybody, that was a super rules lawyery episode of Card Talk. But join us again next week as we talk about more cards and less rules, I hope. Okay, everybody, have a great day.
Do you love the content? Here's what you can do to stay connected. Become a patron. The money collected through Patreon goes into keeping the lights on here at the podcast. We love our patrons, and you can join at many different levels. Visit patreon.com/cardtalk2018. You can subscribe to us, whether you're watching our YouTube channel or you're listening to us in your favorite podcatcher. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications of all our new episodes. Didn't know we were an audio podcast? Find us by searching Card Talk to get access to our 120 plus regular episodes. Didn't know we were a video channel? Find us by searching Card Talk LOTR LCG on YouTube. And there you can find not only our regular episodes, but you can find our bonus playthroughs and other content related to the game. Want to get a hold of Ted, Grant, or myself? Feel free to email the podcast at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.